Do you agree that 9 is a bit of a nervous digit? That people with yellow names look kinder? And that the taste of a vegetable salad is triangular in shape? What if you happen to hear people earnestly discussing such things? Don't hurry to say that they're nuts. They're likely to be synesthetes. By nature, they perceive the world in augmented reality mode. Such remarkable environmental perception is possibly owing to synesthesia, a perceptual phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to automatic involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. That's why a synesthete can not only hear somebody's voice, but at the same time perceive it in color, taste, or touch. Despite the fact that innate synesthesia is quite widespread, on average 4% of the world's population has this ability. However, no one of them has similar responses. The synesthetic feelings of each person are highly individual. The heroes of our program are sure that synesthesia is not just a poorly studied phenomenon, which intrigues the scientific society. Synesthesia is a big advantage for those who have it, and they're ready to prove it to our experts right now. We'll find out right now what task our experts have prepared for the first participant.
Hello, my name is Irina. I'm 28 years old and I live in Moscow.
Since birth, she has perceived letters and digits in color. At the same time, it doesn't matter if she perceives them visually or by ear. Irina sees the Russian alphabet like this, and the Arabic numerals from 0 to 10 like this. She associates all months and days of the week with color as well.
Monday is red-orange. Tuesday has a very complex color, kind of gray-rosy, even a bit beige. Wednesday is green. Thursday is brown. And Friday is grayish, with yellowish rosy colors. Something of the kind. Saturday has grayish but warmer colors too. Sunday is cold gray.
The perception of numbers, letters, and words in color doesn't mean that you can't recognize the font color in which they're printed. All of Irina's synesthetic responses kind of overlay the real image. At the same time, the process of reading doesn't become tiring for her. Phone numbers, dates, people's names, which are important for her, are recorded in her memory as a set of color images, which she can convert into the language of letters and numbers, if it's necessary. It sounds impressive, but our experts are in the habit of checking everything. We'll find out right now if Irina has as good a memory as she claims. For the first trial, our experts prepared a set of months' names. Having written them down randomly, there are 28 names in total because some of them are intentionally repeated several times. Then we ask Irina, who is a designer by profession, to create a graphic drawing which depicts every month as she sees it, owing to her synesthesia. That's what she's done. Of course, this is a simplified image. However, all color shades and the position of the colors are represented as accurately as possible. Then we replace the month's names in the experts list with their images. As a result, we got this image consisting of 28 color squares. Irina has to remember their position. She'll have 3 minutes for it. After that, she'll have to tell us the whole list of months, which were coded in color. It should be mentioned that Irina has never trained her memory intentionally. In her opinion, synesthesia itself works like mnemonics and helps her see information in the form of colorful and bright images. The brighter the image, the faster and more effective she remembers it.
June, May, and May are in the first column. June, July, and June are in the upper row. February's below 2 times, and another February is above them. This is, so to speak, I'll tell you now what rows. The second and the third from the end in the bottom row, and the second from the end in the second row. Now I've returned to the upper row. September and February are in the row where, as I've already mentioned, July, June, and July are... I'm not sure here. It seems to me it was December, but I'm not sure. The last month is March. Next row is May, November, and as far as I remember, May as well. As for the middle, I remember it vaguely.
As hard as Irina tried, she couldn't remember that the second row contained 2 Octobers at once. She wasn't sure about white months in the third row as well. She correctly named the color, but couldn't answer if it was December or October.
Well then, as I've already said, we have February, and then I think something blue. Either November or June. Most likely November. And July below it. This is the bottom row, rightmost. The last month in this row is October, the second from the left. I think so. Well, frankly speaking, I can't point to a precise position for sure because everything is vague like spots.
Well, your time's up. Please reproduce it. Yes, but after all, you're not a monomonist.
No, I'm not.
You're a synesthete.
Recalling the sequence of 28 coded words, Irina made 3 errors. And this is quite a good result, taking into account that she remembered not words themselves, but schematic images, which symbolized her synesthetic responses. During the second test, Alina, a control subject, joins Irina. She doesn't have synesthesia and doesn't train her memory intentionally either. However, her assistance will be priceless. Comparing the girls' results at the end of the test, our experts will be able to see what advantage synesthesia gives to Irina in remembering information, if any.
On my command, a list of dates will appear on the screen behind you. You'll have 3 minutes to remember these dates, and then after I say stop, you'll have to try to write down on your sheets of paper as many dates as you can remember as accurately as possible. You'll have 10 minutes for this task. You'll have 3 such series. Then we'll see how you succeed. Are you ready?
Yes.
Each of the 3 lists will contain 30 different dates chosen randomly. The first list is presented in classical black and white.
Well, time is up.
The participants will try to remember a new list without a pause. Take notice that this time most of the dates are depicted in color. Actually, that is how Irina sees all these numbers because of the synesthesia. Let's see if this trick influences the effectiveness of her remembering. By the way, we use this correspondence palette to reproduce the color of each date correctly. Irina made it for us.
Stop.
And once again, without pausing, the girls proceed to remembering a third set of dates, which is presented in brighter colors. This time, we intentionally used vibrant and acid colors, which are not present in Irina's palette. We'll find out very soon how our play with colors affected Irina's results, who is extremely sensitive to the slightest changes in color shades, or how it affects Alina's results, who is not sensitive to such changes.
Very interesting results. We process these tests separately. I processed the first one. You coped with it very well. You remembered 26 out of 30 dates correctly. Alina could remember 16 dates. I processed the second test. Unfortunately, the so-called congruent colors didn't work. I mean, your results are almost equal to those of the control subject. The difference is literally 2 dates. In any case, the result is quite good. You and the control subject gave 19 and 21 right answers, respectively.
I processed the third test. You managed to remember 20 out of 30 dates, while the control subject only 13. It should be mentioned that we didn't take into account the position of these dates, namely their sequence. We accepted the answer every time you remembered the right date.
Irina remembered the first list as fully as possible. This is quite easy to explain because the information was presented in a usual and comfortable way for her. The presence of dates colored in accordance with her color perception in the second test had the effect of a magnet on Irina. Over and over again, she paid attention only to them, and due to that, she remembered other dates by residual principle. The third list turned out to be the most difficult, which is quite understandable as well. Some of the 3 minutes given to her, she had to spend fighting with the sensation of disagreement between the true colors of the dates and her synesthetic responses. Well, at any rate, we made sure that Irina's synesthesia certainly does have an effect on the process of remembering. However, despite this fact, in all 3 cases, she managed to remember more dates than her opponent, Alina. But does this mean that the experts are ready to recognize Irina's ability as phenomenal? We'll find out that a little bit later.
Hello, my name is Alexei. I'm 22 years old and I'm from Saratov. When I was 16, I began to study music and realized for the first time that I perceive notes in colors. The note C is white, D brown, E beige, F blue, G yellow, A red, and B cyan.
Alexei is a student at the Saratov Conservatory and a future music expert. By the way, in his opinion, synesthesia itself helps him remember pieces of music at school faster and better. Actually, he remembers the music material both as notes and as color schemes. He uses this ability very well. Alexei admits that the only problem is that his color hearing works only when he hears or imagines already familiar pieces of music. Owing to synesthesia, he remembers all pieces of music that he has already heard as a color score. He converts colors into notes and vice versa fast and faultlessly. It really sounds like a phenomenal ability. To make sure that our experts ask Alexei to choose 50 familiar pieces of music which he always sees in color. As a result, we've got a list. Another important stage of preparation for the test is the creation of Alexei's color sound palette. For this purpose, we used an E version of Pantone palette. This is standardized in the fullest color reproduction system in the world. The choice of required colors for every note was carried out under Alexei's control. The slightest difference in color shade, and for example, a blue square won't mean the note F, it will be just a blue square. Everything is ready for Alexei's trial. It's time to find out what task our experts prepared for him.
This task will contain 3 parts, so to speak, 3 stages. In all 3 cases, you'll have to use cards which are on the table behind you. Each card has its own color, which corresponds to either your colors, yes, to notes or keys, as you imagine them. In the first of 3 musical fragments, which we'll offer you, you'll have to determine, so to speak, the structure of the chords, which are represented in colors on the screen. Probably you'll have to play the sequence of chords.
Using Alexei's color sound palette, we coded 15 chords from Romeo and Juliet, an orchestral work composed by Tchaikovsky. How did we do it? A color score of the fragment has two linear levels. The upper level is notes, which the piece of music itself consists of. The lower level illustrates the structure of the chord itself. For example, in this case, these are F sharp, D sharp, B. Using this principle, we coded all the chords apart from chords number 9, 11, and 13. As you can see, all levels of these triads are represented in the same color. That doesn't mean that they contain only one sound. This is still a triad. According to his specific perception, Alexei perceives chords which are formed with the white keys of the piano as the color of the lowest key note. That's why we represented them using only one color. Because the note G of these triads is used twice, as the first and the last note, you can see yellow rectangles on both levels. And lastly, the length of the color figures is different for a reason. In doing so, we tried to show time value and reproduce the rhythmic pattern of the whole musical fragment. By the way, the piece of music which we coded in such a careful way wasn't on Alexei's list. The experts decided that a second-year student at the conservatory would know Tchaikovsky's orchestral work Romeo and Juliet perfectly well. We'll see if Alexei manages not only to play this piece of music according to the color score, but to guess what it is.
A very familiar tune.
But it's not on your list.
No, not on my list, but the piece of music is very famous. Give me a clue then.
We'll put it on and probably you'll tell us what it is.
This is the orchestral piece Romeo and Juliet by Tchaikovsky.
Right, this is the coda. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you had problems with the third chord because here, in this chord, there's the color black, which corresponds to different notes.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Now you're going to proceed to the second part of our test. Please come up to the table. You'll have to work with the cards. You'll listen to a piece of music from your list, and then you'll try to represent, with the help of cards, the initial bars of the fragment. Let's say 2 bars of it, according to your perception.
Okay, let's try.
Alexei, did you manage to recognize the piece?
Yes, this is Symphony No. 7, titled Leningrad by Shostakovich. I'll try to represent it in color.
In other words, Alexei will have to solve an inverse problem and create a color score of this piece of music. It's difficult because he'll have to do it from memory. Taking into account that our participant doesn't have perfect pitch, it will be quite difficult for him to restore the score in his head.
I've tried to represent the tune as I see it. Can you check it?
Don't forget that one of the jury members, Alina Rovenko, is not only a teacher with perfect pitch and an associate professor at the Moscow Conservatory, but also a synesthete.
I can tell you that you had some problems with remembering how the melody line is arranged. I don't know if it's because your color perception is not quite precise, or because you didn't have perfect pitch and it's difficult for you
Sure, right.
to produce what you hear in a key that's different from the original one. Alexei, I think we can proceed to the third task. You'll see a slide on the screen. The slide will represent a fragment of a piece of music from your list. It will be the initial structure of the piece, 4 bars, the first phrase. You'll look at the screen for some time trying to remember this piece. After then, we'll ask you to represent it as well. You can represent either a melody line or, if it isn't very difficult for you, the melody line with harmonic accompaniment or with chords. Do you understand the task?
Yes, let's try.
This time, the experts decided to appeal to Alexei's visual memory. So the third piece of music is represented in the traditional view of a score. That's what Alexei should hear in his head. After 3 minutes, the fragment from Autumn Song by Tchaikovsky disappears from the screen. After that, all the notes which Alexei remembered have to be converted into the language of his synesthesia and represented with the help of the color cards on the table.
I think that's it, but I've got some problems with remembering the harmony. Well, you can see what I've done.
Well, congratulations. Everything you've done is correct.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
To make it clear how successful Alexei was, we'll play the tune strictly following his color score. And now compare it to the original piece.
If I'm not mistaken, he coped with the third part of the test better than with the second one.
Yes.
Does that mean that Alexei doesn't perceive the tune in color, but he understands it somehow and only then represents it in color?
In other words, do you have some intellectual response which demands time?
For comparison. Yes, it seems to me that color just helps me to remember fragments, and then my audible memory is used.
In other words, things which are not directly connected with your synesthesia.
Yes.
It seems that Alexei's synesthesia doesn't conform to the stereotype. Will it prevent the experts from recognizing his ability as the most exciting from a scientific point of view? We'll find out soon. And now, let's welcome our third participant.
Hello, my name is Olga. I'm 52 years old and I live in Moscow.
Literally every letter, number, or word causes a whole range of synesthetic responses in her perception. The colors are primary, of course. Digits from 0 to 9 and consonants define it. Vowels only affect the level of a word's brightness. In addition, Olga perceives the texture of every letter and of all words. In some cases, the temperature level of humidity and even taste. It's interesting what synesthetic response to the word phenomenal Olga has.
Phenomenal. First of all, the word is mainly yellow, because we have here consonants which are yellow in color and are like dry, loose sand, like a dusty, tamped ground. In general, I see a tasteless word, dry like step, like a step road, a long, evenly lit word.
As Olga's synesthesia is strongly connected to speech and expressed mainly in the perception of colors and texture, the experts decided to make sure that these responses are really stable. If Olga responds equally to the same word repeated several times, her synesthesia is surely very strong, and its stability raises no doubt. To put it simply, Olga doesn't make up all these bizarre images, but really sees and perceives them.
You have a color palette at your disposal. It's on the table. I'm going to dictate the names of Moscow Underground stations to you. There will be 58 of them. Your task is to find colors for corresponding stations.
Olga will use the same standardized Pantone palette as a working palette, but unlike other participants, she will work with its paper version. Olga has 543 color samples at her disposal. We hope that this set will be enough to describe her responses.
Let's go. Varshavskaya Station.
Well, Varshavskaya is something in an ochre red color because the first letter defines the color of the word.
Yugo-Zapadnaya Station.
It's like mercury, gray, shiny and slippery. Well, most likely we'll choose something like mercury, something transparent and slippery.
Novokosino Station.
Novokosino, it's blue-green.
Alexandrovsky Sad Station.
White and yellow. I can't find a white color with a slight shade of yellow, but probably this color is closest to it. The light among all of the yellowish samples. Biblioteca is a yellow word.
Biblioteka imeni Lenina Station.
Lenina is a green word, but we won't take notice of it. Here it is, the word biblioteca.
Don't forget that we use the names of 58 Moscow underground stations chosen randomly, perceiving them audibly. Olga recorded her synesthetic response using the corresponding color sample from the palette. Now we'll find out how stable Olga's associations are. For this purpose, we're going to repeat the test.
Dobryninskaya Station.
Dobryninskaya, it's like wood shavings. Well, something like that.
Biblioteka imeni Lenina Station.
Biblioteca imeni Lenina, the word of the same color range. Wood shavings, wet sand. Yugo-Zapadnaya Station, shiny like mercury. Well, Alexandrovsky Sad Station is white and yellow. Varshavskaya Station is so... Oh, I found a word for it. It's coral.
Each color sample in the Pantone palette has its own unique number. To find out how Olga coped with the task, it's enough to compare these numbers and count the number of coincidences. Our experts did it, and it turned out that there were only 4 coincidences. In other words, Olga assigned the same color sample from the palette to only 4 out of 58 stations. However, if we take account of not numbers but colors themselves, the result will turn out to be more optimistic. Look, in some cases, colors didn't duplicate each other, but were very close in their shades. But this doesn't mean that Olga doesn't have synesthesia. Probably the palette was not full enough to reproduce all the nuances of her subjective perception. Let's see what the second test will show. The experts chose 38 names in advance, 19 male names and 19 female names. We asked Olga to give the fullest description of her synesthetic responses to each name. Taking into account the names were quite rare. It's unlikely that our participant could remember exactly the whole list together with her associations.
Olga, you have 38 cards with 38 names in your hands. There are 6 puzzles in front of you. You have to choose 6 out of 38 names according to your synesthetic responses, which match these puzzles. Do you understand the task?
Yes.
To avoid misunderstanding or wrong interpretations, the experts coded only those names which Olga described using exact and unambiguous characteristics by means of puzzles. That's why you won't find the puzzle with the wonderful name vanadium on the table. Because, as Olga said, it's slippery, flat, pale red ochre, with a dark green narrow stripe in the middle. Making up the puzzles, the experts tried to reproduce not only color but also texture, the level of a word's brightness, and of course its taste. Well, let's see if Olga is able to guess what names are coded with the help of such a strange set of items.
Well, here we're looking for a name starting with the letter S. You know, I doubt it. There's the name Charles. It's like blueberry in color, and like all this glitter. There's no letter I here, but there is the letter I. So I'll take the risk and say, this is such a beautiful name, Borislav. It perfectly matches this combination of items: yellow, dry, slippery. The name Shamil perfectly matches the first puzzle, taking into account that it's as shiny as this fur and as sour as this lemon. Taking into account the letters H and E, the name Henrietta perfectly matches that leather belt and undoubtedly is assigned to it.
It's amazing how easily and confidently Olga is solving the puzzles. This time she's describing her perceptions remarkably exactly, repeating everything she told us a week ago almost word for word.
I'll keep the name Praskovia as a variant for this potato. Though it doesn't match it perfectly, I see Praskovia as a potato with dirty skin and soil on it, because the letter P is like soil. As for the name Zenaida, it's created for a doll wound, around with nylon thread. That's definitely Zenaida, because according to my perception, Zenaida is artificial like nylon thread.
6 out of 6 names are decoded absolutely correctly, but Olga doesn't know it yet. She's been cautious, so she decided to check herself once again.
The name Spyridon. If this composition was a bit darker, it would match Spyridon, but I'm inclined towards Borislav because it's light. Borislav is lighter. The name Juarez. Charlotte. Well, Charlotte would compete with Shamil for the first combination, but it's sweeter. That's why I'm insisting on Shamil. The name Natalia is green. Laurentius is green. Violetta, the name Violetta, would compete with the name Charles for this combination, but the blackberry is best for Charles.
Well, colleagues, it's amazing.
Perfect.
It's amazing you've solved all the puzzles.
Well, we've seen the performances of all 3 participants. Now the experts have to decide whose abilities are the most interesting in respect to science.
Let's begin with Irina, if you don't mind. She's solved her task quite curiously. In her case, it's difficult to distinguish synesthesia from memory. On the other hand, she exhibited good results in the test with the months. It's impossible to learn it by heart. She had a bit better results in the series of the Czech test.
Yes, I think that the test with the months was impressive, and I, as a synesthete, confirm that she indeed associates months with definite colors. Only some general laws of perception could raise questions, because she remembered months placed in the middle of the table worse. But we can see a mutual correspondence between the months.
Yes. Alexei, as far as I'm concerned, he has some problems with his musical memory. It was difficult for him to recognize even those fragments which he played himself. Well, Yelena will correct me, but I think that he doesn't have perceptive synesthesia. In other words, he can't see colors in response to definite melodies and tones. but I can't say for sure if he learned it by heart or if it's a matter of practice. I can't say definitely.
I agree with you because he told us that he had synesthetic responses to well-known pieces of music only. I think that the absence of perfect pitch plays an important part here. Probably if he had perfect pitch, he would be able to associate color and sound immediately, and we would have true synesthesia.
And finally, Olga. Well, frankly speaking, I was impressed by the way she solved the puzzles. In general, she solved them faultlessly. I think her synesthesia is indisputable, given what we've seen. She impressed me most of all. But as for me, the first series raises many questions. With the stations, in this case, the divergence is quite great. I mean, as a synesthesia expert, I can say that it's more likely. It's a big question for me.
Well, I agree with you because in the test with the stations, even basic
Yes, absolutely.
tones didn't match, not to mention saturation, brightness, and lightness.
But at the same time, we should mention some stability, some sequence. And Irina could be interesting for science. It's very interesting.
Well, in respect to stability,
Right.
her stability.
Irina!
So let's choose Irina.
We choose Irina.
It's extremely difficult to study such a subjective and mysterious phenomenon as synesthesia with the help of scientific methods. Yet scientists are well on the way to it. For example, in spite of the elusiveness of this phenomenon, they have learned to measure it in the strict sense of the word. And now Irina will have a unique chance to mathematically estimate the genesis of her synesthesia.
We're going to carry out a very special test for synesthesia. With the help of it, we'll get an index by means of which we'll be able to estimate if you really perceive letters in color or your associations are just memorized. We'll have 96 tests. In other words, the alphabet will pass in front of you 3 times. It will take about 10 to 12 minutes. Are you ready?
Yes. Excuse me, but there's no required color here.
Which letter?
Z. These colors are very green, pale compared to what I need.
Choose it. Regardless of the brightness, just the tone which you perceive as a response to this letter.
Okay, I'll try.
Even a special palette with the widest range of colors turned out not to be enough for Irina to be able to find the required shade of green. By the way, she faced the same problem when she tried to find the required saturation for the letter M.
I'm ready.
This number is called a geniusness index. The smaller it is, the better. The genius index of Irina's synesthesia goes to 0, which is considered quite rare and undoubtedly is an interesting case.
It means that you have consecutive responses. Your color synesthesia is quite bright. You're able to reproduce the stimulus and the response which you experience several times. As for specific results, you had unstable responses to some letters. You have unstable responses, more specifically, they're reflections in your answers to the letters B and X as well. Why is that?
I think it's because both letters are gray. The letter B is a bit warmer. The letter X is a bit colder. As for the letter I, it's kind of confusing because in general, I've never had problems with this letter. This is the first letter of my name, and it's definitely red, and probably it's just an unfortunate mistake.
Irina, the index 0.31 is quite low, and not all people I work with have such a synesthesia index. Even in spite of some technical problems which could have an effect on your perception, I can certainly conclude that your synesthesia is innate. Thank you for your cooperation. I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably it would be too bold a statement on our part to call synesthesia phenomenal. It's very difficult to show it or even describe it. It is strictly individual and quite subjective experience. Moreover, just a few synesthetes realize how to take advantage of this ability. However, many scientists admit that today's science has a lot of reasons to consider synesthesia a wonderful human ability, like perfect pitch, a keen sense of smell, or phenomenal vocal abilities.